Maren slid the datapad across the polished metal table. Her fingers rested beside it. Deliberate. Open. The Krix worker drone across from her stood motionless. Unit 14, its carapace was dull amber. A missing joint on its left hind leg caused a slight tilt in its stance. Slack mandibles suggested no threat, just waiting. She spoke to the empty air in front of the drone. The Nest-Mind listened through every Krix on the station. Speaking to one was speaking to all. The Concordance proposes a 40-year mineral rights lease. We offer full graphene manufacturing technology in exchange. No human labor. No human presence beyond scheduled deliveries. Your claimed territory stays intact. Our ships stay out of your space. She paused. She watched the drone's mandibles for a twitch. Nothing. The Nest-Mind was patient. That was fine. Maren had been patient longer than most species had a single thought. Raynor shifted beside her. He adjusted his glasses. His datapad held annotated Hive behavior models. She had told him to keep it stowed. He was young. He would learn. The drone's head lifted a fraction. Its translator unit strapped to its thorax produced a flat tone. The metal box was scarred with welds. Your technology can be reverse-engineered. Your graphene will become ours. Then what? No, you will provide labor instead. Direct. Predictable. Your bodies are adaptable. Your hands are fine. We will direct them. Maren kept her face still. The counter was good. Hive logic valued predictability above all else. A machine could be studied. Human labor was a resource the Nest-Mind could plan around. This was expected. Before she could respond, Raynor stepped forward. "Excuse me." He pointed at the drone's damaged leg. "That injury, the seal is leaking fluid, it looks untreated. Is that standard maintenance for your workers?" Maren shot him a hard look. He stopped. The drone's head turned slowly toward Raynor. The translator crackled. "Unit 14 is functional. The Hive does not waste resources on cosmetic repair." Maren stepped in before Raynor could push further. Her voice remained even. "A reasonable concern from my colleague. We have different standards for equipment. No offense intended." The drone offered no reply. The Nest-Mind was calculating. Maren laid the next piece on the table. "A trial period, 6 months. We transfer the graphene manufacturing process to your fabrication bays. Your workers learn to operate it. At the end of 6 months, if you are satisfied, we negotiate labor terms from a position of shared understanding." She held the Nest-Mind's attention. The Hive consciousness pressed against the air. It was parsing her intent. The drone's antennae twitched. Left, right, left again. Raynor jotted something on his datapad. His hand trembled with excitement, not fear. He had theorized the pattern indicated indecision. Now he had confirmation. The Nest-Mind spoke again. "A human host will remain on this station as collateral. If your trial fails, the host belongs to the Hive." Maren did not blink. She had expected this. The Nest-Mind needed a tangible anchor, something in flesh. "I will stay." Raynor turned to her. His mouth opened. She ignored him. She met the drone's empty gaze with her own tired eyes. The Nest-Mind paused, 16 seconds by Maren's internal count. "The trial is accepted." The drone's mandibles did not twitch. No reaction. The Nest-Mind had already turned its attention elsewhere. Maren reached into her coat pocket. Cold against her fingers was the plasti-wrapped ration bar. She pulled it out and dropped it near the drone's feet. It landed with a soft thud. The drone looked down. Its mandibles clicked once, a single sharp sound. With the scraping drag of its damaged leg, the drone bent slowly and picked up the offering. It placed the bar on a nearby tray. Then it straightened and returned to motionless. The Nest-Mind said nothing. Maren watched the drone's antennae. They were completely still. The Hive had logged the action as waste, not worth comment. But that click, that mandible click was not a Hive signal. It was a single unit making a sound of its own. Raynor stared. His question burned in the air. Maren gave a small shake of her head. "Not now." The drone gestured toward the corridor with one segmented arm. "Your quarters have been prepared. Follow." It turned and walked. The damaged leg dragged across the floor with a staccato scrape. Maren followed. Raynor fell in beside her. His voice was a low whisper. "That clicking sound, that was individual behavior. That's not supposed to happen. The Nest-Mind controls all motor functions." She watched the drone's back. Its carapace was cracked in places, poorly sealed. Amber fluid at the leg joint still seeped. A slow drip marked its path. "Not all of them," she whispered back. As they walked, Maren saw the drone held the bar against its thorax, close to its body, like something precious. It was gone now. She kept staring at the empty corridor where it had stood. She closed the door to her new quarters and leaned against it. Raynor was already unpacking, muttering about neural mapping. She did not tell him to stop. She was not listening. She was still seeing that amber fluid, the dragging leg, the mandible click. She had agreed to stay as collateral, but she was not the only thing being held here. Tren cleaned the welding torch and placed it in the rack. Around it, the repair bay hummed, conveyor belts grinding, chemical baths bubbling, other drones moving in perfect synchronization. Every motion had purpose. Every drone knew its place. Tren did not know its place anymore. In a crevice 3 rows behind the sealant storage sat the ration bar. Tren had wrapped it in scrap insulation to protect it from the Hive's recycling sensors. Hiding something was illogical. Resources belonged to the collective. Waste was efficiency lost. Tren kept the ration bar anyway. It did not know why. The question sat in its mind like a foreign object, an irritant that would not dissolve. Drones did not question. Drones processed assigned tasks and returned to the Hive's data stream. But every time Tren's thoughts drifted toward the hidden ration bar, the Hive's signal grew dimmer, fainter. The ration bar created a shadow in its awareness. The human came through the bay doors at the same interval as always, 47 cycles since the agreement. Maren. She carried a data pad and walked straight past the other drones without acknowledgement. They did not acknowledge her either. They were busy, efficient. But Maren stopped at Tren's station. "Unit 14, she said. Her voice had a rhythm the Hive did not use, rising and falling like a damaged machine still functional. Tren turned its head. The damaged leg joint ground against itself. A wrong sound. The Hive had noted the inefficiency but assigned no repair. The joint was functional enough. Full repair would consume resources better spent elsewhere. Maren crouched. The data pad went dark in her hand. She looked at the leg joint with her small, dark eyes. How does it feel? The question had no framework. Drones did not report sensation. They reported structural integrity, joint angle tolerance, load-bearing capacity. The leg is non-functional, Tren stated. The Hive does not prioritize repair. Maren's mouth moved in a way Tren had learned to recognize as displeasure. "I noticed. I've been watching you favor it for 3 weeks now." The younger human stood in the corner. Raynor. He held a recording device and watched with an intensity that made Tren's antennae twitch. For 47 cycles, he had watched every interaction. Sometimes he spoke to Maren, sometimes he just wrote. Maren pulled a small case from her satchel. It clicked open, revealing tools, small ones sized for human hands. She held up a thin probe. "I can fix that joint. It's part of the agreement, maintaining worker efficiency." The Nest-Mind pulsed through the local network. Approval, efficiency improved. The calculation was simple. Resource expenditure from the humans equaled 0. Gain equaled 1 fully functional drone. Maren worked for 1 hour. Tren stood still as she manipulated the joint. Her fingers were warm against its carapace, warmth without purpose, contact without function. The Hive offered no framework for this either. Tren simply stood and let the warmth happen. She talked while she worked about the feel of the alloy against her tools, cold and rough and slightly pitted. She talked about the satisfaction of matching a joint surface to its socket, the precision of the fit, a simple joy in fixing something. Joy. Tren filed the word away. It did not understand the concept. But the human's voice had a quality that matched the word, a lightness, a rhythm without distress. The leg joint clicked back into alignment. Maren stepped back, wiping her hands on her trousers. "Try it. Flex the joint through its full range." Tren obeyed. The leg moved smoothly. No grinding, no resistance. The joint's new rhythm was clean and precise. From the network, the Hive sent a pulse of approval. Efficiency improved. Task completed. But there was another pulse, fainter, private. It came from somewhere inside Tren itself, a separate current, a quiet thread. "Gratitude." Tren did not report it. The Hive did not ask for it. The feeling sat in the same hidden space as the ration bar, a secret Tren kept for itself. That night, Tren returned to its sleeping alcove. The other drones had already entered their rest state, minds silent, linked to the Hive's passive maintenance cycle. Tren did not sleep. It moved to the crevice behind the sealant storage. It removed the scrap insulation. The ration bar sat inside, wrapped, hidden, private. It held the object in its forelimbs. The packaging was slightly soft from the ambient heat. Its smell was unfamiliar, sweet, and chemical. It did not eat it. Other drones would have consumed the resource. Efficiency demanded it, but Tren held the ration bar and waited for the following day. The hive pulsed in the background, constant, familiar. Tren's own signal was growing louder. It did not report this either. Maren adjusted her grip on the small, polished bearing. She approached Tren's workstation. The drone's antennae twitched at her footfalls. 47 cycles of routine had built this moment. She had started calling it Tren. At first, the drone did not respond. Then, after a week, its head tilted at the sound. A flicker of recognition. A private signal in a public space. "Tren," she said. She held up the bearing. "This is for your new joint. It will make the motion smoother." The drone took the bearing. Its mandibles clicked softly. The private sound now meant acknowledgement. It meant something like thanks. The change spread slowly. Another drone, a cargo hauler designated Unit 7, began to linger near Tren's workstation during maintenance cycles. It watched with large optical sensors fixed on the interactions. One day it nudged a fallen tool back toward Maren with its foot. It did not receive an order. It simply acted. Rayner's datapad filled with notes. "It's mimetic," he whispered to Maren in their quarters. "The behavior spreads through observation, not psionic signal. They learn individuality from each other, from you." "The Nest-Mind will notice," Maren countered. Her voice was low. "It tolerates one anomaly. It will not tolerate a faction." "What if it cannot tell the difference?" Rayner mused. "To the Hive, they still perform their duties. Efficiency is stable. What does it matter if a few of them click?" It mattered. Maren knew it mattered. The Nest-Mind was a creature of pure logic, but even logic has thresholds. She was pushing it. She began leaving small things for the other drones. A polished river stone for Unit 7. A scrap of brightly colored wire for a sanitation drone. Useless objects, inefficient, but they were always taken, always kept. One day, Maren found Tren waiting for her. In its forelimbs, it held a small shape fashioned from scrap metal. A crude star with 5 uneven points. The edges were still warm from a welding torch. It held the object out to her. "A shape," Tren's translator spoke. The voice was still flat, but the word choice was new. "For you." Maren took the star. The metal was warm against her palm, rough, imperfect. She had told Tren her name meant star in an old human language, a passing comment made months ago. It had remembered. It had created. This was the threshold. That evening the summons came. A larger drone stood outside her quarters. This one was a warrior caste. Its carapace was scarred from old mining conflicts. It did not speak. It gestured toward the central spire. The Hive's core intelligence resided there. "It knows," Rayner breathed. His face was pale. Maren pocketed the metal star, its sharp edges dug into her palm. "Yes," she said, "it knows." The chamber door slid shut behind Maren and Tren. Heat and wet air hit her face, thick with the pheromonal tang of the Hive. At the center, a globular mass of neural tissue pulsed with soft, internal light. This was the brain, the god, the prison. Its voice pressed against Maren's skull. Her teeth ached from the psionic weight. "You have introduced error, a contagion of self." Tren stood beside her. It had followed without being commanded, an act of defiance the Nest-Mind could not miss. Behind them, Unit 7 and 3 other infected drones stood guard at the chamber entrance. Their posture was rigid. "This is not an error," Maren projected. She focused her thoughts into a coherent broadcast. She had learned to do this over the months, a basic defense against the Hive's constant mental pressure. "This is an evolution." The globular mass flared with violet light. "Evolution is directed by the Hive, for the Hive. These units are broken, they hoard resources, they create useless objects, they deviate, they must be reset." A wave of psionic force slammed into them. It felt like a physical blow. The 3 drones at the entrance collapsed. Their limbs twitched as their minds were scoured clean. Their new identities erased. Unit 7 shuddered and went still, its optical sensors dimmed to a vacant stare. It was a husk again. Tren stumbled but did not fall. It braced its repaired leg. The human-made joint held firm against the psychic assault. It fought back. Its fledgling sense of self was a tiny shield against an ocean of command. "You see," the Nest-Mind's thought voice boomed. "It resists correction. It is a cancer." The pressure intensified, focused entirely on Tren. Maren saw its antennae droop. Its mandibles trembled with strain. It was losing. She had brought this upon it. "Rayner, now," she sub-vocalized into her comm unit. In their quarters, Rayner slammed his hand on a concealed panel. The signal went out. A tight beam burst to a supply shuttle holding orbit on the far side of the station. The pilot, Finn, had been waiting for this signal for 2 months. "Special delivery," Finn's voice crackled in her ear. "Marked for your eyes only." A small, cylindrical object materialized in Maren's hand from the shuttle's cargo teleporter. A short rod with a flared emitter, cold and dense. The psionic disruptor, counter-hive equipment, insurance. The Nest-Mind sensed the device. The psionic assault wavered. A surge of focused alarm replaced it. "Forbidden technology, you bring war to this place." "You started the war when you tried to execute my friend," Maren retorted. She thumbed the activator. The pulse erupted as a silent wave, a ripple in reality itself. It did not destroy, it severed. The disruptor rod grew hot in her grip, then cold. The psychic pressure in her skull vanished. Complete silence. No hum, no background chatter, no hive presence pressing against the edges of her consciousness. For the first time in its existence, Tren was alone in its own head. It looked at Maren. Its multifaceted eyes were wide. Its antennae waved in the empty air, searching for the hive's signal. It was no longer there. The Nest-Mind recoiled. Its surface contracted. Bioluminescent veins dimmed to a dull gray. It had not been harmed, but it had been wounded, amputated. It could no longer touch Tren's mind. The chamber floor began to vibrate. Alarms blared throughout the station. On the hive's private network, a single command went out to every loyal drone. "Eradicate the contagion. Destroy the humans." "Maren, we have a problem," Finn's voice cut through the noise. "Concordance ships just decloaked. 6 of them, heavy cruisers. They're calling this a containment operation." She grabbed Tren's arm. "What kind of containment?" A pause, static, then Finn's voice tight and low. "They're going to glass the station." The station screamed. Alarms bled into the shriek of grinding metal as loyal Krix drones began tearing through internal walls. Maren and Tren ran. The metal star Tren had made digging into her palm inside her pocket. "The Concordance fleet is hailing," Raynor's voice crackled in her ear from the command center he had fortified. "Admiral Morse, she's giving us 10 minutes to evacuate before she initiates sterilization protocol." "We need more time," Maren yelled, pulling Tren around a corner just as a warrior drone smashed through the wall where they had been. "There are other free drones, we have to find them." "The hive is hunting them," Tren's translator rasped. Its new freedom was terrifying. It could feel the hate of its former siblings as a physical force. They reached the repair bay. 3 other free drones were cornered there, defending themselves with welding torches against a tide of their brethren. Maren fired the disruptor again. Another silent pulse, and the attackers faltered, their connection to the hive's rage severed. They stood confused, looking at their own hands as if for the first time. "Come with us," Maren urged. "To the shuttle bay, we can escape." One of the newly freed drones shook its head, its antennae drooping. It looked at the approaching swarm of loyalists. "This was our home," it clicked, the first words of its new life a lament. It turned to face the onslaught. There was no time for grief. Maren herded Tren and the other 2 survivors toward the docks. Finn's shuttle was waiting in Bay 4, its ramp down, engines whining. "Maren, the Admiral's getting impatient," Finn shouted over the comm. "And Raynor just found something. The Nest-Mind has wired itself into the station's reactor. If we leave, it blows the whole system." She stopped dead, a suicide switch. The hive would rather die than let the infection of individuality escape. It was the ultimate act of control. She looked at the handful of free drones cowering behind her. Their lives against everyone's. The choice was impossible. It was also simple. "Admiral Morse," she said, activating her direct channel to the fleet. "This is Maren, Concordance broker. The Krix Nest-Mind has rigged this station to detonate. Any attempt to glass it from orbit will trigger the reactor breach. You will lose the station, the graphene tech, and your task force." A long silence. Morse was no fool. The threat was credible. "What is your proposal, broker?" "Give me 1 hour. I can disable the link between the hive and the reactor. In exchange, you grant safe passage to my shuttle and its occupants. All of them." "Unacceptable. The Krix are a hostile hive entity." "Not all of them," Maren pressed. "Some of them have broken free. They are the asset, Admiral, a new form of non-hive intelligence, worth more than all the graphene in this sector. Let me save them." The silence stretched. Maren could hear the sounds of fighting drawing closer. 1 hour, Morse's voice returned, clipped and cold. "And Maren, if that station blows, I will hunt your shuttle down myself." The line went dead. Maren turned to Tren. I need to get to the reactor core. You need to get these drones to the shuttle. Go, now. Tren hesitated. Its mandibles opened, then closed. For the first time, it had a choice that mattered: stay and fight with Maren, or leave and save its new, fragile family. We will be waiting, it said, then turned and guided the other 2 drones toward Bay 4. Maren ran for the core. The corridors were a slaughterhouse. She used the disruptor sparingly, severing drones from the Hive, turning enemies into dazed, confused individuals. It was a mercy, and it was a weapon. She reached the reactor chamber with minutes to spare. The Nest-Mind's psionic presence was everywhere, a coiled serpent wrapped around the glowing core. Disconnecting it physically was impossible. There was only one way. She placed the disruptor on the core's main conduit. She set it to overload. This is for Tren, she whispered and ran. The disruptor's overload sent a final, massive pulse through the station's frame. It was not a severing. It was a scouring. For a single, silent moment, every Krix on the station was cut off from the Hive. The Nest-Mind was blinded, deafened, and muted. Its consciousness had been woven into the very metal. The link to the reactor detonator failed. The station held. On the bridge of the Concordance flagship, Admiral Morse watched her sensor readings flatline. The massive psionic signature of the Krix Hive was gone. Report, she barked. Psionic event, Admiral, station-wide. The Hive signature is neutralized. Life signs remain, but the collective consciousness is absent. Morse stared at the view screen. A single shuttle was pulling away from the station. Maren's shuttle. It had waited until the last possible second. Let them go, she ordered. Tag them. I want to know where they run. Inside the shuttle, the cargo bay was quiet. 13 free drones, gathered by Tren in the chaos, huddled together. Maren sat among them. Her back rested against the cold metal wall. The overload had drained her of all strength. Tren sat beside her. Its repaired leg was extended. Its hand rested near her knee. They were refugees. A new species, 13 members strong, born in fire and silence. They ran to a neutral way station on the edge of concordant space. Morse let them. The station was a gray, functional hub of commerce and transit. Maren used her broker credentials to secure a quarantine bay. The drones were classified as non-human sentient assets. They were treated like specimens. Scientists in clean suits came to take readings. Guards watched them from behind reinforced glass. They were safe, but they were not free. This is not a life, Tren's voice came one day. It had spent weeks with Raynor learning to modulate the translator for nuanced speech. This is a cage. Maren looked at the other drones. They were listless. The silence of their own minds was a constant burden. They had been part of a symphony. Now they heard only a single lonely note. They needed purpose. They needed a home. Maren went to Admiral Morse. She found her in a sterile observation deck. Morse looked down at the Krix. Her face was unreadable. They are a risk, the Admiral stated without preamble. A fractured Hive can reform. What happens when they decide we are the enemy? They will not, Maren said. A Hive commands. They have learned to choose. That is what I wanted to show you. You have shown me a successful mutiny, not a stable society. Then let us prove it. Maren stepped closer. Give us a world, a place to build, something to make our own. The Concordance has hundreds of uncolonized moons. Give us the worst one. Give us a rock. We will make it a home. Morse was silent for a long time. She looked from Maren to the drones below. She saw Tren gently adjusting a nutrient pack for a smaller, weaker drone. She saw 2 others working together to repair a faulty light panel. Inefficient, illogical, cooperative. Rampion 7, Morse said finally. It is a barren rock with a thin, unbreathable atmosphere. No resources, nothing but craters and silence. If you can survive there, the Concordance will recognize your sovereignty. We will, Maren promised. The metal star Tren had made was still in her pocket. She had held onto it through the fire, the flight, the cage. It was a promise, a beginning, but foundations draw attention. The galaxy never leaves such things alone. 5 years later, the airlock on Rampion 7 cycled with a familiar hiss. Maren stepped onto the gray rock and let the thin, cold atmosphere settle around her. Ahead, the main habitat dome glowed with warm, artificial light, a beacon against the black sky. 5 years of work, 37 souls building a world from dust. She touched the crude metal star in her pocket, a habit, a talisman. Nur met her at the outer lock. Maren had given Tren the new name on their first day here, a word from an old tongue meaning light. The The drone's carapace had darkened with age, and the scar across its thorax was a pale line against the amber. Its antennae, however, held high. Its gait was purposeful. Maren, Nur's voice was rough but clear, a product of years of practice. The Varath envoy arrived early. Maren nodded. I heard. They are waiting in the central chamber. Nur's mandibles clicked once, a private signal. Worry. They do not understand us. No, Maren agreed. They won't. The central chamber was the heart of the dome, a garden of earth crops and Krix fungi thriving under artificial suns. Water trickled through a channel carved from native stone. At the chamber's center stood the Varath envoy, a towering insectoid of deep violet chitin. 2 guards flanked the entrance, motionless. The envoy's voice was a low hum resonating through the floor. The broken ones, you harbor them. They are not broken, Maren said, stepping forward. Nur and Raynor took positions at her side. They are free. There is no difference. The envoy's head tilted. A drone leaving the hive is damaged. A limb severed from the body does not live, it rots. Then explain what you see, Maren challenged, gesturing to the thriving dome, the Krix children playing near the water, the quiet industry of the free drones. The envoy was silent, its compound eyes swept the chamber. I cannot, it hummed. That is why I am here. These creatures are abominations. They broke the natural order. They must be reabsorbed or destroyed. Nur stepped forward. I remember the hive, it said. I remember the weight of 1,000,000 minds. I remember never being alone and never being myself. It paused. I felt gratitude once. A human fixed my leg. I kept the feeling because it was mine. That is not an efficient action, the envoy stated. No, Nur agreed. It was not efficient, it was mine. The envoy's guards shifted, their weapons humming to life. Maren drew the psionic disruptor from her belt. You would threaten us, the envoy thrummed. I would remind you, Maren's voice was steady. The bond between humans and these free drones is not a weapon, but it can be used as one. You call them broken, we call them family. The envoy's antennae lowered. After a rapid series of clicks with its guards, it turned back. I must consult my hive. It inclined its head. We will return. The envoy and its guards departed. 2 days later, a fleet of 12 Varath heavy cruisers arrived at dawn, filling the sky above the dome. They held their position, a ring of silent steel. This time, the envoy returned alone.